From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Beat the Champ. My name is Paul Peck, joined by Hall of Fame bowler Sue Novoitsky as we kind of wrap the summer up here and get everybody back to thinking about bowling as we head into the fall. And we're here at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda, Sue, and we've got a great lineup of bowlers and a great mix of bowlers. We've got 4 first-time Beat the Champ competitors versus 5 of the guys who are pretty much regulars on this show.
That's right. This first show, we're going to see a lot of new faces taking on one of our old faces, Mike Zarcone. But we're going to see definitely new bowling today. And a lot of that is because we've seen a different lane condition this week here at Manor Lanes.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting wrinkle here on Beat the Champ is that the lane conditions, the oil patterns are much different than we've had on the show before, and that's going to provide another level of challenge for these guys.
Absolutely, but it has brought us some new faces, and we'll see something much different this time.
Yeah, so our new faces, Mike Zarcone is our defending champ. He'll come back and bowl the first match, but we've got new guys like Sam Carson, John Dinelewicz, and Mike Johnson. They are coming your way. It is Beat the Champ at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. Let's get rolling. Sam Carson on the left making his Beat the Champ debut against the man who has now been on more Beat the Champ shows than anybody else, and that's Mike Zarcone. But it's Carson, 51 years old, from the City of Tonawanda, who will lead things off here on our first match at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. And Sue, Sam is an interesting guy with an interesting bowling style, for lack of a better word. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. He brings something to the bowling table, not necessarily here today, but overall that we've never seen before. And here we go. Sam Carson's first throw in the match against Mike Zarcone is a strike.
That was a pretty great shot coming out of the gate, knowing that he's coming up against someone that's a great champion like Mike Zarcone, and a little more challenging the lane condition today, and he made it look easy.
Yes, we're going to talk a lot about that moving forward here, but Mike Zarcone, the winner of our final match 2 weeks ago at Alley Brant Lanes in Lockport, comes back as our defending Beat the Champ champion. As I mentioned, this is his 6th show, and he gets the late fall for the strike in the first frame. His 6th show, he has 5 wins and 3 losses, and those 6 shows now are the most of anybody, at least until we get a couple of weeks into the show when Matt Zazowski will bowl in his 6th show as well, too. But Mike Zarcone has been a regular and as consistent as anybody here on this show.
Well, it's a tribute to his versatility that he can come from house to house, varied lane conditions, varied surface conditions, and still be a top player in all of those circumstances.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, that is really ultimately the challenge for these guys is adapting to different conditions. We've got wood lanes here at Manor Lanes. We've been on synthetic, we've been on wood, and then the oil pattern is something, again, I'm holding that for the moment because I want Sue to talk an awful lot about it, but I want to get everybody to understand and know who these guys are. And we get our look in the second frame with Sam Carson. And it's another strike. You saw Sam throw with the right hand. He could have thrown with the left hand, not necessarily here in this competition, but Sam is both a right-handed and a left-handed bowler, and that amazes me that he's had almost equal success both ways.
One step further than that is that he shot 300 with both hands, and that is quite an accomplishment because it's one thing to be able to throw the ball right-handed, left-handed. It's another thing to be able to throw 300s with them. 11
right-handed 300 games and 2 left-handed 300 games for Sam Carson. He said he's a natural right-hander, but he just started bowling, in the late 80s, just for the heck of it. Started throwing with the left and all of a sudden started to have some success with it, and he kept doing it. And then in 1993, he had his first lefty 300, but as you've pointed out to me, and the rules are that you have to declare one arm or the other, I guess would be the way to put it, when you bowl in a league.
Per league. So he could bowl in one house right-handed and bowl in another house left-handed, but whatever he chooses to start with, barring an injury, he has to continue with for the entire year.
Right, so it's not like he could sense the changing of the of the oil patterns and shift to lefty if he gets it. So, and speaking of oil patterns, we've got ourselves an interesting challenge here as you look at Zarcone again. And to help us explain a little bit of that, we brought in our buddy Jim Russo of the Bowling Proprietors of Western New York and the former owner here at Manor Lanes. Jim, it's always good to have you. We always have our guy with his finger on the bleep button when you come on the show. You know.
I'm getting a very bad reputation.
Yes, you are.
It's great to be here. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Nowhere else. Nowhere else than hanging out with you. So Jim, what we want you to explain a little bit is, and we talk an awful lot about this as we go through the year, but what we've done here today and what you and your son Brian, the owner of Manor Lanes, have done here is kind of give us a little bit of a different challenge to the bowlers based on the oil conditions from qualifying to here today. Go ahead and explain.
Right. Well, since we took over the center in 1973, it's been a high-scoring center. Always had probably the highest scores in the area. And when people look at the scores and they see like an 840 on top, they're more apt to look at it and say, well, I'm not going to qualify with that type of score. So we made a conscious effort to calm the scores down a little bit by putting out a little more of an even pattern, which means we put more oil across the lane. That being said, the USBC comes out with these different types of programs. We used a program called the Route 66. Problem is, Route 66 here plays a lot differently than Route 66 would at transit lanes.
Right, because of the surface.
Yeah, you have so many variables in this game that it's just, nothing is ever going to be the same. You have a different lane machine, you have different lane oil, you have different lane surfaces, you have different humidity in the buildings. You might have a lane that's over a heating duct or a cooling duct, and all of that creates variables that change the condition.
You saw Sam with an open frame in the fourth, which already could be key, Sue, because Mike Zarcone has put a ring of 4 strikes on the board already. 4 strikes in a row for Mike Zarcone. That would be the hedgehog, wouldn't it?
The hedgehog.
See, I did my research this, right? Am I good with that one, Jim? You never heard of that one?
I thought that was newly dubbed the ham bone.
Yeah,
What?
that was the hand bone.
I think the hedgehog qualifies here on 4 in a row. 5 in a row now for Mike Zarcone.
He's gone from not knowing that much about bowling to creating his own bowling terms.
Nope, I did not create it. I've done extensive research. What do you think I do every month while we're waiting for the shows to come up here?
I don't want to tell you what I think, but
So Sam Carson left the door open a little bit here, and Mike has jumped through it already. And again, what's interesting for Mike is because he did not have to qualify this week among the 200 bowlers that qualified to be on the show. He really hasn't bowled on this Route 66 oil pattern.
Right, and that would actually be considered a disadvantage. He was only, he had 10, 15 minutes of practice before we started today, but he's perfect through 6 and has a commanding 43-pin lead already in the 4th frame.
Hasn't seen the bother. Sam Carson's 51 years old. He's a bakery worker for Tops Markets. He's been there over 30 years. He's a native and still lives in the city of Tonawanda. Been bowling for 44 of those 51 years. And there's a nice strike coming back off that open frame. This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
right. And what's going to happen, I think you're going to see that they're going to start moving a little bit right, because as the oil carries down on the lane, they'll have to kind of move a little bit more right to get their ball to finish. So,
Right, which is typically not what you would consider to be the way you would move on a lane condition. But
backward from the way you would normally think about it.
7 in a row for Mike Zarcone. He has had strikes all the way so far through those 7 frames. What we've normally seen here on Beat the Champ is the guys will qualify on one oil pattern, then come back and usually bowl on the house pattern, which has increased the scores. But what the big difference here is that they're bowling on the same pattern they qualified on.
Right, right. And the lane machine, the lane machines of today strip the lane every time it dresses the lane, which means you have a fresh back end.
Take all the oil off, put the new oil on.
Exactly. And so the back ends finish really hard.
And the strike run comes to an end with a three-pin leave for Mike Zarcone in the 8th frame. You could kind of see him hopping as soon as he threw it. He knew it wasn't going to get where he wanted it to.
Well, that's a little bit with the lack of forgiveness in the middle of the lane. So typically, there's a heavy concentration of oil in the middle of the lane, and in this particular pattern, the concentration is lighter down the lane. So if you pinch it in, get it in a little bit side of your target, the ball will hook and oftentimes leave a split as opposed to it holding up in that oil.
Right.
So it's an open frame for Mike Zarcone in the 8th after he only got 2 of the 3 pins that were remaining. But it's still a pretty sizable lead right now of 70 pins, I believe, lead for Mike Zarcone right now as Sam Carson gets set here in the 8th frame. Nice strike for Sam. You know, one of the things I noticed right off the bat about Sam is his ball goes 5 or 6 feet down the lanes when he throws it, as opposed to some of the guys that are right on the ground, right off the foul line.
He does throw a little bit straighter. He's quite a bit straighter than Mike, so his projection will definitely be different.
And that's a tough one in the 9th frame for Sam Carson. Not really going to allow him to catch up very much when you leave 3 like that.
Probably one of the tougher splits right here.
Yes, because you have to hit the 2-8 head on and then hope for it to bounce and take out the 10.
Let's see if he can do it. Well, he got the 2 in the 8, could not get the 10. So it's a second open frame, this one in the 9th for Sam Carson, and now Mike Zarcone with a chance to finish things off here and grab what would be his 6th Beat the Champ win, which would tie him with Matt White for the most since Beat the Champ's return in 2016, and there's a nice strike from Mike.
Well, this was an impressive showing for Mike, again, because he hasn't seen this lane condition and didn't get the opportunity to qualify on it. So this was a great adjustment for him to come in here and figure this shot out right off the bat like that.
Right. So when Jim and Brian Russo were telling us that this lane pattern has more oil in the middle of the lanes, how does that affect the bowlers one way or the other?
It actually has less concentration of oil in the middle of the lane.
Okay, less. Thank you.
So the high concentration is only in the front.
Right.
And it decreases as it's stretched out down the lane, which is not typical to a house shot, which stays heavy down the lane to hold the ball from hooking. In this case, the concentration is heavier in the front, but there's nothing to hold the ball from hooking in the middle of the lane. So again, if you pinch it, if you get it in a little bit, you're not going to get that typical hold to the pocket. You're going to see the ball actually go left the head pin, or Brooklyn as we call it.
Another factor is the speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nowadays the pro bowlers, they're throwing with like 3 different types of speed, and I don't think your average bowler understands that part of the game. They throw the same way every shot, and your more advanced bowlers will have 3 speeds available to them so that they can battle that type of condition. On a condition like this, you tend to want to throw a little bit faster.
That's absolutely a great point. Like, you'll see people who, and I'm going to use Liz Johnson as an example, who just won the U.S. Open last month, or earlier in the month. You'll see her stand in the same spot, necessarily maybe not move her target as much as you think, but her ball speed is what she's changing.
Right.
Or a little bit of her hand position and allows her to stay in the same area. So there's not necessarily a big move to the right or a big move to the left, because at that level you can change your hand positions a hair or your ball speed. And
244 on the board for Mike Zarcone. It's going to get him the win. You saw Sam with the split there that ends him at 181. So Mike Zarcone, pretty much our most successful Beat the Champ bowler, has done it again as he gets his 6th win here. We will talk to Mike, we will talk to Sam, get their feeling on how they adjusted to the oil conditions, and Mike will get ready to take on his next opponent. Jim, always good to have you here. Maybe we'll let you stick around. You've been well behaved so far.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. We'll come back and talk to those guys when we return on Beat the Champ from here at Manor Lanes. It's a 244 to 181 win for Mike Zarcone over Sam Carson to get us started here on Beat the Champ at Manor Lanes. You come in as the #1 qualifier, a lot of confidence, and he runs off 7 straight strikes to kind of show you who's boss a little bit, right?
Yeah, I got steamrolled, no doubt about it.
Did you have fun, though, more importantly?
Absolutely. Walked in with a smile, and I'll be going out with a smile.
All right, well, there you go. Our ambidextrous bowler, Sam. I know we're going to see more of him, maybe on the left side the next time around.
Well, Mike, you had the unusual challenge of not having to qualify in this shot and have to come in as the champion. What was your approach to the lane today when you came into practice?
Well, I had a little practice on the practice pair, and they were hooking a little bit. So when I came over to this pair, they were a little tighter. So, and you know me, I like to play in a little bit. So I had a good look.
Oh. All right, well, he's going to try to keep that roll going. He is already now tied for the most Beat the Champ wins. Can he get win number 7? John Dinello is next up for Mike Zarcone when we continue on Beat the Champ here at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. And there's our first look at the challenger, John Danielewicz, who will take on Mike Zarcone in our second match here at Manor Lanes. John is from Sanborn. He retired at age 58. He's retired. Only been bowling for about 20 years, but he's been a pretty consistent guy in trying to qualify for Beat the Champ, and finally kind of broke through here. And talking to him before the match, I think part of that has to do with his fact that he likes the oil conditions and the lane conditions. So almost got himself off the bat with a 7-10 split there before that 7-pin fell for John. We're at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda, New York on Grand Island Boulevard, just near the 190. ManorLanes.com is your website for all the information you need. And here we get our second look in the first frame at John Danielewicz, and he'll grab the spare.
Well, even though they've had a few practice shots, that first shot, his first shot on television, is always a little tired. It's hard to get out of the gate. And again, his first time on TV and taking on somebody like Mike Zarcone, who...
Yeah, a little intimidating, right?
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
yeah.
It has to be. So here's Mike Zarcone's first roll here in match number 2. Much like most of his other rolls,
just the way he left off.
Down.
Yeah, it's interesting to see there's two very, very distinct styles out here. Mike is, he has a little bit of a scoop release. He's way inside of target. John is very, very straight. He's going to be playing the lanes more right to left, where Mike is way inside of him playing the lanes, opening up the lanes, we like to call it, going from left to right.
Mike Zarcone going into the Greater Buffalo USBC Bowling Hall of Fame in 2016 for an outstanding career, many, many years of bowling, over 40 of them, and an incredible amount of success for Zarcone. And if you've been on the shows, we get our look at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, manned as always by Janelle Sabin. We're early on in match number 2 in our second frame, but boy, Mike's been a lot of fun to watch, and he really is truly in almost every way one of the best bowlers in Buffalo history.
A well-deserved honor. Not only has he spent a lot of years bowling, he spends a lot of time bowling. I mean, he bowls 3, 4, 5 times a week, bowls tournaments. He's very dedicated to the sport.
So a tough leave there for the 58-year-old John Danielewicz from Sanborn, a 214 average. He bowls weekly at the Lewiston Event Center and at the Bowldrome.
Both in Niagara Falls area.
Correct. He's won 5 Amateur Bowlers Tour titles. Oh, nice spare pickup.
That's not a spare you see every day.
No, that was a tough little cluster of pins there to knock down.
Yeah, whenever there's a pin in the back, it always makes it that much more challenging. But on this lane condition again, and I hate to bring up the lane condition, but it's definitely a factor in the show versus other shows. And when you're playing right to left like that, if you miss your target to the left, you can get one of those odd results, leaving an odd spare like we just saw.
Right. Now, in the first match at 244 to 181, those were not unusual scores, but I think if you're... Oh, he got it. Nice slate fall there for John, striking the third frame. What I was going to say is if you're tuning in here and you might notice the scores are a little bit lower than maybe you're used to seeing on the show, that will have as much to do with the lane conditions. It's going to bring the scores down a little bit, isn't it?
It can, but like we saw that wasn't really all that different from normal, is because these bowlers have bowled on it and bowled well to be here today.
Is this a common, we talked about, Jim Russo talked about the Route 66 oil pattern. Is that a relatively common one around town, or is it a little bit of an unusual one?
No, it would be considered unusual. It's definitely a sport pattern, and most houses don't put out the sport pattern, which I thought was an interesting thing to do here at Manor. It gives you a different perspective rather than the same pattern that's placed in all of the houses. This is definitely something unusual.
4 in a row for Mike Zarcone right off the bat. The sombrero, 4 strikes in a row. I told you I did my research.
What website did you go to?
I cannot reveal my sources. I cannot reveal my sources. Apparently, no matter where, there are different terms for different things for the same thing in different parts of the country.
Okay.
So I may be inflicting this upon Buffalo bowlers for the first time.
Nice recovery there.
Yes.
The emphasis is on shot making. So I know that John commented that he enjoyed bowling on this pattern, and it's not going to be as much free hook for people that you would normally see. So there's an emphasis on shot making, emphasis on hitting your target, and you know, better bowlers enjoy that challenge.
So it's still a tight match here. John is hanging in, and again, he's been lucky with a few late pinfalls to save him. He still leaves 2 here in the 5th frame. Beat the Champ show debut for John Dinelewicz. All 3 of our bowlers here in the first show are all making their debuts on the show. We saw that with Sam Carson, and we'll see that with Mike Johnson coming up in our next match. Over 200 people trying to qualify for this week's show here at Manor Lanes, and we'll give you the qualifying information coming up this weekend.
That's an excellent point. And one nice thing about the new Beat the Champ since it's come back is that we do travel to other bowling centers, so it's not restricted to a certain area. Like we've got Lewiston, Niagara Falls, Tonawanda,
we went from
Grand Island
Jamestown to Lockport, you know, the last 2 months.
So it's giving people an opportunity from different parts of the city to compete.
Classic Lanes will be our next stop for Beat the Champ. There is 5 in a row for Mike Zarcone, and it's a tight turnaround this week with Labor Day and everything. So qualifying has actually already.
Next
coming up next weekend. I'm sorry.
Right.
It'll be next weekend, and it'll start on Thursday the 25th at Classic Lanes, Saturday and Sunday with a top 24 roll-off coming on Sunday the 28th at Classic Lanes.
And now we're at that time of year where people are all getting ready to come back to leagues and starting to work on their game, starting to practice.
Yeah, Mike's ball kind of died there. We saw that happen in his first match to end his strike run. It just sort of lost its energy as it kind of came into the head pin.
Well, that's one of the challenges we're seeing here now. Instead of just a simple leave like a 1-pin spare, because of the challenging lane condition, you'll see a little bit more formations.
Ooh, that's a tough one, Miles.
We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
There's a nice one.
It's not the worst position to be in, like you mentioned to me earlier, is that because he came in on the last show at Alley Brandt, he really only had to win one game to get to be the champion. So he really gets to
but then, as we also talked about,
his legacy here.
He didn't have the chance to get used to the oil conditions, although it hasn't really slowed him down.
No, it hasn't.
Nice strike. John Dinello in the 8th frame.
And that was truly a great shot what he threw there. It was like this, it hit the pins in the same exact spot as the 8-10 did, but you could see the rotation of the ball. He got a lot of spin on that ball, and that was the difference between, 10 in the pit and an 8-10.
So now it's 9th frame for John Dinelowitz, trying to keep pace with Mike Zarcone and grab his first Beat the Champ victory. Nice. 3 in a row. That's a turkey for John Dinello. Good late match stretch here.
Well, that
putting
was
the heat on.
Answering the call right there.
Right, and we are down to a 1-pin advantage at the moment for Mike Zarcone. He'll get the 9th and 10th frames right here. Ooh, that's a big time door opener right there. You can see the look on Mike's face. He's a little disgusted with that one.
Well, he's going to need to slide that 4-pin over.
He'll lead the 4, the 7, and the 10.
He's going to want to hit the 4, 7.
I got no name for that one. Next week, I'll have it for you next week. Let's see what Mike does here. And it's going to be a second open frame of the match for Mike Zarcone. So he'll finish things out here in the 10th frame. So where are we at right now?
What he does here is very important. If he strikes out, we're looking at a 218. And John can strike out for 230. So he needs to get the double here in the 10th frame.
He doesn't like it. And he'll like it even less when he sees it.
His feet got a little fast there.
Yep,
he wanted it a little too much.
A real picket fence on the left-hand side, 1-2-4-7 for Mike Zarcone. So this one is really kind of moving the momentum back to John Dinello. Boy, to think that Mike Zarcone would have had 3 open frames would have been shocking to me, and it won't happen there. Good spare pickup for Mike after the bad first shot. So one more here to post a final score. And then it'll be in John's hands.
Yes, he's going to need decent count and a spare to win this match. John will.
Final throw for Mike Zarcone. And he leaves the 1 pin. So on the board, a 207 for Mike Zarcone. Will it be enough? To be determined here.
So it's still important what he gets here for count. So he's going to need 7 or better on his first ball and still need good count on his, spare it and still need good count. But a strike will put this away right here.
So a strike right here puts it away?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see what he does. There it is.
What a great shot.
Boy, he threw that one through the end of the bowling alley.
What a great shot.
And John Dinello is going to get himself his first Beat the Champ victory. Very impressive. He's going to, on a string of 4 consecutive strikes here, with 2 more balls to throw.
It's interesting, since that weak shot in the 6th frame,
yep.
that pocket 710 where he didn't get any rotation on the ball at all, every shot since then has been absolutely perfect.
Another strike and a clap of the hands of satisfaction for John Dinello, and he is going out in style here. Going to get himself a win. Looking to end it on 6 consecutive strikes. The Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard tells the story. 1 more for John Dinello to post a final score and a first victory. And anytime you beat Mike Zarcone, anytime, any place, anywhere, that's a big deal.
Absolutely, great.
And it wouldn't fall at the end, but it doesn't matter. It's a 230 on the board for John Dinello, and a nice round of applause from our good crowd here at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. And we've got a new winner to talk to.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to John Dinello about his victory, and it's always fun to talk to Mike, win or lose. He always gives us some good insight. We'll get both guys on the lanes, talk to them about a terrific match, and prepare you for our 3rd and final match of the week. We're at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. We're right back after this here on Beat the Champ. The sixth frame told the story of this match between Mike and John. You started hot with 5 straight strikes and kind of hit your pothole in the sixth frame. He hit one too, but then he kind of put the pressure on you from there.
Right, I had a great first half of the game, and John had a great second half of the game. And yeah, one bad shot in the sixth frame was a little slow.
It kind of took you out of the match a little bit, didn't it? We could kind of see that look on your face. But John, even though he had the sixth frame open, he was able to fight his way back from it, Sue.
What was your adjustment to that sixth frame?
I moved right a little bit because the ball wasn't finishing when I left that 8-10 split. So.
And he seemed to get a little bit more aggressive with it too after that.
That's what I wanted, so I moved it over a little bit. Made the right choice.
Yeah,
good adjustment.
And he winds up ending with 5 strikes to put the match away. So John Dinello comes back for one more match. I know we're going to see you sometime soon because we always see you and we like to see you. So, but Mike Zarcone, a regular here, still holds our mark with the most Beat the Champ wins, and I know he'll be adding to that. We got another match coming up here from Manor Lanes. John's back right after this on Beat the Champ here on WBBZ. That's Mike Johnson on the right to take on John Danielewicz in our third and final match of the week here at Manor Lanes on Grand Island Boulevard in Tonawanda. Beat the Champs, first trip here to Manor Lanes. We've been to Manor 2. Now we're going back to Manor number 1.
Absolutely nice family-run business.
Yep, 43 years, family owned and operated by the Russo family. And we had Jim on a little earlier in the show. We're going to get Jim on in next week's show as well too. And there's John Dinello off the bat, leaving 3 pins on the right-hand side. But he struggles a little bit off the start here. He was a strong finisher in the last match.
Yeah, speaking of Manor Lanes, I remember when I first started bowling, City Campagna, which is Jim Russo's brother-in-law, the original owner of Manor Lanes, was still active in the bowling industry. So we're going back a long time.
Manor Lane's been here since 1973, originally owned by Jim's father, Brian's grandfather,
Which is
Brian,
City.
Jim owned it and ran it, and then Brian has run it since 2014. So as we've mentioned, over 40 years of being family owned and operated. And there's Mike Johnson with a nice start. 44 years old, from Grand Island, New York, a warehouse manager is his full-time occupation. Been bowling since he was 6 years old. Cumulative average of over 230. An average 229 in qualifying here to make the third qualifying spot and be on our show here. Good look at determination on the face of Mike Johnson.
Yeah, this is a case where you see the how unforgiving this pattern is. He got that shot in, he's playing in, but he got that left of his target, and when you do that on this condition, it's going to go left of the head pin.
Well, the first thing I notice about Mike, and I always tend to notice the different mannerisms and stuff, holds the ball very low on the start.
He does, and we all have our little things that compensate, that help us get to the line the way we need to get to the lines. Some of us need to get the ball in the swing faster, we hold it up higher, or there's all different things you can do to get to the line the right way, and it's all in your setup, it's all in your push away.
You saw the look of the smile on Mike's face there. I think the breeze of the ball going by that pin is what knocked it down for the spare.
It's all it needs.
Here's John Dinello. And a nice strike in the second frame for John. Coming off that impressive finish where he had 5 consecutive strikes to wrap up the match over against Mike Zarcone.
Well, with his unique hand position, he's found a way to create himself a little bit of hold, which is one of the challenges on a shorter pattern like this, where the oil isn't as heavy down the lane. He's created a little bit of hold, and that's what's making him successful.
Now, how has he been able to do that?
Well,
hand position, bowling lineup, and everything.
Right. Again, Jim had touched on variables earlier in the show, and if you have a lot of loft, you delay the hook. He's got the perfect combination of setting it down the lane and restoring enough energy, but not storing so much energy that the ball goes high.
And a couple of pins, the 4 and the 7 left for Mike Johnson, who bowls on Monday nights at Island Lanes in Grand Island. Hangs out with the Malwitz gang. Mike Malwitz, our buddy from here at Beat the Champ, drills the balls for Mike. And then he also bowls in the Saturday Travel League. 38 career 300 games, 14 career 800 series with a high of 857 for Mike Johnson.
Very impressive numbers.
Looking for the spare in the 3rd frame, and he gets it. It's his Beat the Champ debut, so 2 guys essentially going at each other on their first shows here, and John trying to get the win so he can claim his first trophy on Beat the Champ, or Mike. One of them's going to claim it. We'll see who. And then one of them's going to get to come back again next week. Never turned, did it?
No.
Never made that turn to the left.
He's not making him look quite as easy as John's making him look. He's going away from the pocket a little bit, and it's going to create a little bit more margin for error.
How do you as a bowler get a chance to try out and practice and perfect your bowling on different oil patterns? How do you go and search out, hey, I want to bowl on the Route 66 because I want to test my ability? How do you find stuff like that?
That is a great question, because the truth be told, you can't. We had a summer sweeper at Transit Lanes this year that actually every 2 weeks changed the oil pattern, and the bowlers got to see a lot of these oil patterns, and they got to bowl on them 1 week, get established on it, come back the next week and bowl again, and then the next week they switch it again. But very few houses really do that.
Boy, you saw the look of disgust on John's face there as he leaves that split. The 8-10, correct? Am I correct with that?
That's the 8-10
split.
That split's made me want to throw bowling balls right over the bridge, I'll tell you. His execution wasn't bad. It's just, again, is deflected a bit.
How do you get this?
It's a tough one.
Not that way.
It's not an easy spare to make.
An open frame in the 4th for John Dinello as he leaves that 8-10 split. So it's kind of hard to track down some of the more exotic and unusual oil patterns, right? I mean, there's not a bowling alley that specializes in one particular oil pattern. You can say, hey, let's go up over there in Amherst and bowl this particular pattern
We've mentioned that some of the bowlers that we've seen on the show has bowled the Sport Shot League at the Edge. There's very few leagues where they're putting out these sport patterns. That happen to be one of them. Most bowlers are victims of house shots, and that's really all they get to see. If you know a proprietor, or if you spend a lot of time bowling in a bowling center, you could certainly speak to the proprietor and ask them to practice on it. Most of the time they'd be happy to put the shot out for you, but you don't really find it in league all that often.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Does that approach by Mike put any pressure on his back at all, being bent over like that?
Not if you really don't have back problems, it really wouldn't.
Again, it's a little unusual from what we've seen from many of our other Beat the Champ bowlers.
And he keeps the ball low. He doesn't push up at all. He keeps the ball low, but when you release the ball, you really want to have bent knees and be low to the approach. So he just starts out there and never really comes up again. So he ends up in a very good position.
And you got a great look at it there from cameraman Tim Batt, getting you a good shot of the knees and the back and the approach, and a nice spare in the 7th frame for Mike Johnson.
Bowlers to start more upright on the approach will progressively go down. You can watch their heads go down as they approach the lane. But in his case, he just stays low, starts low, stays low.
The Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard shows us that this one is still tight. a 19-pin advantage for John Dinello, but not for much longer. Strike in the 8th for Mike Johnson.
So we're looking at a 9-pin lead for John. But Mike has a strike up, which is always an advantage.
So John's got to shake off that open in the 7th with a couple of good rolls here in the 8th and the 9th. Looking for a second consecutive win is our 58-year-old from Sanborn, New York, John Dinelowitz. Oh, he's frustrated. He's hitting them hard. He's hitting them well. He just doesn't seem to be getting a lot of luck with some of those corner pins.
That's an incredibly frustrating lead. He has to actually hit high flush to avoid that pocket split, and that's just bad luck right there.
Spare in the 8th for John Dinelowitz. And it's just a single-digit lead for John right now as he moves to the 9th frame.
What's important on these scoring patterns, though, is your spare making. You don't want to, you're going to see more splits than you would normally see. So it's very important that you make your spares.
What's going to happen with this lane condition as we move on through our next couple of shows here?
Well,
going to get harder or easier?
In bowling terminology, I'm going to predict they're going to get pretty ugly.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That paints an excellent word picture there, Sue.
Yeah. Well, the front just...
And we've got some great bowlers coming up. I mean, we've got some guys who really know what they're doing, in our next couple of shows, including guys like Matt Sazowski and Joe Pullman and Tony Dolan and Chuck Jagosinski. They're all still to come here at Manor Lanes. Strike for Mike Johnson in the 9th.
Well, that puts him in a position to go ahead in this match.
So he'll bowl out here in the 10th frame, will Mike, and a chance to post a good score that will put the pressure on John.
Mike can actually shut John out with 3 strikes in a row here, but he would need all 3, because double and 9 will make the possibility of a tie.
Determined look on the face of Mike Johnson. Nice. 3 in a row.
He liked that one.
Yes, he did. 3 in a row with 2 more rolls to go here in the 10th frame. You can see how tight things are right now.
He's really put the pressure on John here. That was a big strike in the first one in the 10th.
Now, he got one fall late there. He'll leave the 10 pin. That didn't have a whole lot of energy when it hit the pocket.
He got that one inside of his target a bit.
So Mike will try to pull off the spare here and post the final score, and then John will know what he's got to beat. So the final score on the board for Mike Johnson as he grabs the spare. That final score is going to be a 192.
So no matter what, we have to see John throw the first one here in the 10th. But
Okay.
if he doesn't throw this first strike, it's an automatic win.
So
for
strike
Mike.
and stay alive. Anything less than a strike is a win for Mike. All right, well, there's your setup. So John Dinello eyes the alley here, and that's what he's got to do. And it will not happen. Once again, you could just see that thing lose its speed about 3/4 of the way down.
Well, we've got a new winner here.
Yes, we do. So John Danielowicz's 1-match winning streak will come to an end, and it's Mike Johnson's Beat the Champ debut is a good one. with a victory 192 to 166. So Mike Johnson is going to get to take home that big Beat the Champ trophy, and he's going to get to come back next week to keep hanging on to that trophy. Sue and I will come back and talk to John and Mike when we wrap up our final match of the day here. We are at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda, and you're watching Beat the Champ. It's a victory for Mike Johnson over John Dinello. It's 192 to 166. You look like you were starting to get very frustrated. A few things were not going your way.
Yeah, I tugged a couple. I just was making bad mistakes.
Did the oil conditions start to have some effect on you as well?
No, it was all me, not the lanes.
It was all
me,
you.
Yeah.
All right. Don't blame the tools, blame the mechanic,
Yeah,
right?
It's all the bowls.
So,
Well, that's a hard-fought victory on what it's a tougher scoring condition, and you actually came across at the end and figured it out. Did you change something?
It was more about not changing anything. I just settled in a little bit. I did move a couple boards left just to try to loosen myself up, but it took a while. But I did settle in a couple good shots there by the end.
You're the recipient.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
there you go. It's a Beat the Champ weekly win trophy for Mike Johnson, and that means he gets to come back on next week's show. We'll preview next week's show from here at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda. When Sue and I come back, you're watching Beat the Champ. Good first week here at Manor Lanes in Tonawanda, and we've spent so much time, Sue, talking about the oil conditions and their effect on the bowlers and the way that it tested them. So wrap up how that went for the first three matches.
Well, I think it just results in a little bit of lower scoring condition than what we're normally used to seeing, but it's still an emphasis on shot making and emphasis on making your spares, which is always going to be important to the game. So we're just going to see a little bit lower scores, that's all.
Yeah, 3 different matches, 3 different winners. Mike gets to come back, and his first match right off the bat will be against the guy who won our first ever Beat the Champ match, and that's Joe Pullman. We've also got Matt Zazowski, one of the more successful Beat the Champ bowlers, in our next week's match here. But we're getting to that point now where fall is almost here, and it's time for everybody to put the summer stuff away and grab the bowling ball, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we have the benefit of having a qualifier coming up in just a couple of days. So we have one on a Thursday night before the leagues start going, and there's no more lanes available on the weeknights. You can get out there Thursday night and try to make our next show.
All right, so that'll be next week's show when we're back here at Manor Lanes. We hope you'll join us. Thanks for watching on Beat the Champ.